Online.
Did something end abruptly last week, or you finished the recording? It felt like it was like at the end of a sentence. Oh, we're watching it. I don't think it was only the book. Oh.
Yeah, a little bit. I know what you mean. I was in the middle of a subject, but I wanted to continue discussing it offline, so I ended it.
It's the premium content.
Right.
You have to be here.
Exactly.
Final.
How will we ever get anybody to show up here? If not, because there's some premium content that you don't get online. The inside scoop. We thought the food would do it, but
Oh, wow, living in.
You can't ask questions through the Zoom.
it's true.
What's the number? It's 14, right?
13.
Oh. You get it, too excited.
You're living in the future.
Living in the
The chapter living in the now is in the future. Now we're in 13.
We'll get to that next week.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe in 2 weeks.
No,
I don't know if we're going to get through the whole chapter. You're not going to be here?
Go to Japan.
I think they have Zoom in Japan. They have YouTube in Japan. And they have Chabad in Japan. Oh, Schneer, there's Coca-Cola in the fridge, in the garage.
You know,
I was about to say that wherever there's Chabad, wherever there's Coca-Cola, there's Chabad. And then I remembered that there's Coca-Cola in the Meyach.
Premium content.
Society, there's Pepsi, is that
That's visually.
my father
So
came up
maybe
with
they
it.
banned Coca-Cola.
He came from Israel to visit me in Mexico, and I thought I'm in the middle of the jungle.
You hope
No, my rabbi told me
They can't have
about the
our
house
Coke.
right there, hour away,
Which city?
in Puerto Vallarta. If we were in,
I have a
we
cousin.
were up north from there.
I have a nephew, Chabad, in Mexico, but in a nice place.
Yeah.
San Miguel de Allende. San Miguel de Allende.
Everything is
You know it?
something.
It's a nice place. It's like a nice town. Oh,
Did we win it?
Not that.
huh?
Did we win it?
No, I think it's Menachem headed for the men's club, I think.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think we
The men's club, I remember that was
Well, let's see if anybody drinks it here. What's the sticker?
It's a Mexican one.
It's their passport.
Mexico City, real sugar.
Real. Carlos.
So we've been talking about, we're up to chapter 13, Tanya chapter 13. We were talking about the last few chapters, the Alter Rebbe is describing for us what exactly is a tzaddik, what is a Benoni, what is Rasha. So we discussed first he discussed what's a tzaddik. And he said that the tzaddik basically is someone who has no appreciation for anything besides godliness. He asked, what is a Rasha? The Rasha is somebody who does have, not only has an appreciation for that which is not godly, but also does things that aren't godly. And then the Benoni is the one in between. What's in between? The Benoni has desires and appreciation for things that are not godly, but would never do them. That's the Benoni. That's in a nutshell. So essentially, there are two things. There are two components. One is the kohot, what are called kohot pnimiyim of the neshama, the inner talents of the soul, meaning the feelings and the ideas. And then there are the livushei hanefesh, the garments of the soul, which are the three modes of expression of the neshama, which is thought, speech, and deed. depending on to what extent the nefesh habahamit, the animal soul, takes control or has influence over the person, that determines whether the person is a tzaddik, benoni, or rasha. If the nefesh habahamit takes control to the extent that it not only controls, not only overpowers and takes control of the action, the ideas, the thoughts, and the feelings, but even the actions, then that's a rasha. If the animal soul can only control the feelings but not the actions, that's a benoni. If the animal soul doesn't even have the ability to control the feelings because it's been completely chased away or converted into godliness, then that's the tzaddik. Okay?
And control even the feelings.
The tzaddik, the nefesh habahamit, does not even control the feeling. The nefesh habahamit has no control whatsoever. It's completely batel and even converted into kedusha. That's the tzaddik. Which is why we shouldn't worry about not being a tzaddik. It's probably not in our program. We have to work on being benoni. In fact, the Alter Rebbe, who wrote the Tanya, once said, and one of his primary chassidim was sitting there and he didn't like that at all. He said, hey, Rebbe, we're not Rishayim either. And if we're not Rishayim, it's kind of like the conversation in the Gemara with Rabba and Abaye that we had at the beginning of Tanya, where Rabba said, Kagon Anna Benoni. He said, I'm an example of a Benoni, and Abaye said, wait. If you're a Benoni, then the rest of us are sunk. We don't stand the chance. So, so that's the issue. How is it possible that a tzaddik can mistake themselves for a Benoni? So we learned a little bit about it. The idea basically is that they're so similar because the Benoni never sins, right? But even so, it's still hard to understand. The Benoni does have feelings for, appreciation for that which is not holy and not godly. The tzaddik doesn't. So how does the tzaddik not know? So we're going to get to that soon. But for now, let's do chapter 13. Ubazeh yuvan. And now we will understand with everything that we said before. Lashon Maimer Azal, what the Chachamim said, Beinonim zeh v'zeh shoiftan. Remember at the beginning of Tanya, he quoted from the Gemara, and he said, the Beinoni is ruled by this one and this one. Zeh v'zeh shoiftan. What does shoiftan mean? Judges them, right? Doesn't really mean rules them, it really means judges them. Pirush, this means Yetzer Tov v'Yetzer Hara. Both this one, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, both judge them. Judge the Beinoni. Diksiv, like it says, Ki amoid li min evyoin lo hishia mishoiften afshe, that Hashem stands to the right of the poor man, or the poor one, meaning the godly soul, lo hishia, to save it mishoiften afshe, from those that judge the soul. So it could mean one of two things. It could either mean God stands to the right of the Beinoni to save him from the two judges that are judging him, being the godly soul and the animal soul. But probably more accurately, I think, it means that God stands to the right of the godly soul to help it, to save it from the judges that judge it, meaning the Yetzer Hara and the physical, the body. Those are the two. Anyway, in any case, but there are the judges that judge that. What does it mean? It doesn't mean this one and this one rule. It means judge. Because if there was some kind of actual control that the Yetzer Hara had over this small city, which is the person, the human being, even if only for a brief moment, Nikra Rasha, then in that moment you'd be called a Rasha if the animal soul takes control. So it can't mean that the Beinoni, the Yetzer Hara sometimes controls the Beinoni. If the Yetzer Hara is in control, it's not a Beinoni anymore. Ella, Hayetzer hara einu rak al derech mashal k'may shoifet v'dayam. Ha'omer daito b'mishpat. The Yetzer Hara, just like the Yetzer Tov, is like a judge, or I guess in the American system, it would probably be more like a juror. But in the Torah system, a judge. There were 3 judges, 7 judges, 9 judges, 27 judges, 72 judges, depending on what kind of court case it is. The judges serve as the judges and the sort of the lawyers, and the jurors, the jury also. They make the arguments. The judges argue between themselves of what should be. So the shoiftei nafshoi, the judges over the nefesh, are those things that give their opinion. But just like the judges who give their opinion, there's no guarantee that the ruling will be according to that opinion. It could be that the ruling will be according to the other judges, right? Nevertheless, it is possible. The Yetzer Hara gives his opinion about what should happen. The Yetzer Hara says, yes, you should have that ham sandwich, but that doesn't mean it has to happen, because it's just a judge, not a ruler. Because there's another judge that argues with him. And somebody has to be the what's it called? The
judge.
Tip the balance.
The decision maker.
Means to the halacha kedivri machria, and the law, the rule will go in the direction that the third opinion says. So if you have one judge says yes, one judge says no, the third judge says whatever the third judge says goes. Who's the third judge? Who's the third judge?
זה שבצד.
Batzad?
זה שבצד.
It's exactly, you're right. It says it in the pasuk. I don't know if you're joking or if you're serious. Ki ya'amod liyamin evyon lohoshia mishofte nafsho. God stands on the side, and he's the third judge.
I was gonna say God.
It's a joke in Israel. כל מה שזה שבצד אומר קדוש. Holy. All whatever. The one on the side says.
Nice.
It's from the... Oh, that's not good.
ישראלים.
עם סגולה.
עם
No,
סגולה.
yeah.
That's it.
So the law goes according to the third opinion. So basically what this means is that the Beinoni deals with the fact that he has a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara. He has to make a decision between the two of them, but not that the Yetzer Hara controls. The Yetzer Hara gives an opinion. How is that different than a tzaddik? By the tzaddik, the Yetzer Hara doesn't even give an opinion.
And the one that break even is God.
So we'll see. God helps. Yeah. The same is true. The Yetzer Hara is right there in his office, in the left side of the heart, and he gives his opinion. And from the heart, it goes up into the mind to think about, like we discussed in chapter 12. And immediately the second judge argues with him, which is the nefesh, the godly soul in the mind, which also spreads out, it extends itself, and has an influence on the heart, which is the place of the Yetzer Tov, the right side of the heart. And the law is, the rule goes according to what's it called? There's a word for this. Anyway, the tiebreaker, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ha'ozer the Yetzer Tov, who helps the Yetzer Tov. Like the sages say, if God would not be there to help him, then he would not be able to. If God wasn't there to help the Yetzer Tov, he wouldn't be able to win out. Why? Because the Yetzer Hara is pretty powerful. Not only is the Yetzer Hara pretty powerful, the Yetzer Hara is older and more experienced, because the Yetzer Hara starts life right at the beginning of life. The Yetzer Tov doesn't happen until bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. So the Yetzer Hara has an advantage. So God creates an advantage for the Yetzer Tov in order for the Yetzer Tov to win. V'ha'ezer, what is that help that God gives? He ha'ora shemeir or havaya al nefesh alikis. That's the light that God shines on the godly soul. Like we mentioned before, lihiyas la yisrain v'shlita al sichlas haksil v'yetzer hara yisrain ha'or min al kanal. That's the light that Hashem gives to the Yetzer Tov, just like the advantage of wisdom over foolishness, like the wisdom of light over darkness, like we spoke about a couple of chapters ago. So when the Alter Rebbe explained before that when it says in Tanakh, or is it Mishlei, Ki Yisrin ha'or ha'bo min ha'choshech, I noticed, Shlomo Melech says, I found that there was an advantage to chokhmah over, to wisdom over foolishness, like the advantage of light over darkness. And the Alter Rebbe explained that it doesn't just mean an advantage, it actually means a certain strength that light has over darkness, that it can push it away automatically. And a little bit of it gets rid of a lot, but it doesn't need to fight. It has a natural a winning edge over darkness. Light naturally beats out darkness. Same thing is true with wisdom over foolishness, and the same thing is with holiness over unholiness. So that's a fact created by Hashem. Hashem created the fact that your Yetzer Tov will have an advantage over your Yetzer Hara if you just let it. That's a gift. And that's how Hashem helps the Beinoni to be a Beinoni, by creating this reality that the Yetzer Tov has, the Kedusha has a natural advantage over unholiness. Problem is, if this is true that the Yetzer Tov has an advantage over the Yetzer Hara naturally, then why is the Beinoni a Beinoni? Let him become a tzaddik. Why is a Rasha ever a Rasha? Just be a Beinoni, if there's this natural advantage. So he continues and he says, however, because since the evil that is in the left side of the heart of the Beinoni, it is in its original strength, just like when it was born, to desire whatever pleasurable things there are in this world, and has not become diminished compared to the good. And has not been removed from its place at all, which its place is what? The left side of the heart. Rak. The fact by the Beinoni is that the Nefesh HaBehamis, the Yetzer Hara, is still there in the heart. It just doesn't have the strength and doesn't have the ability to spread itself out and to influence the hands, the mind, the thoughts, the speech. But it can influence the feelings. That's where it is. That's what it does. It just can't affect actual action, to actually do a sin. Why can't it? Because God is there helping the poor one. That's why it doesn't have the strength. But naturally, it would without God's help. You have a Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. Who says which one should win? The reason the Yetzer Tov wins is not because the Nefesh HaBehamis is too weak. It's because God gave the Nefesh Elokit, God gave the godly soul an advantage. Lachei nikra kirasha. That's why he is referred to as like a Rasha. Like we said in the first chapter of Tanya, remember, there was the quote, Afilu kol ha'olam kula oimrim licha tzaddik. Even if the entire world tells you that you are a tzaddik, heyei beinecha kirasha, you should be in your eyes, consider yourself like a Rasha. The Alter Rebbe says it's important, v'loi Rasha mamash. Don't think of yourself as actually being a Rasha. Kirasha, like a Rasha. Who's like a Rasha? The Beinoni is like a Rasha. You should consider yourself a Beinoni, which is like a Russia. And don't believe the whole world around you that's telling you don't believe anybody that says, oh, you're a tzaddik, you're a tzaddik. See? That's why when you came in here and you said tzaddik, well, I didn't believe you. But I had already prepared the chapter. When the world tells you you're a tzaddik, don't believe it, because the world is looking at you. What do they see?
What they want to see.
They see your behavior. They can't see what's going on in your heart. They see your behavior and they say, well, judging by your behavior, it looks like you don't have a Yetzer Hara. Don't be fooled. The Yetzer Hara is right there where it always was. Only it's overpowering.
The Yetzer good.
The Yetzer Hara is overpowering only enough to make you feel a desire for sin, not enough to make you do a sin. That's kirasha. That's a beinoni. Elo yihu beinav ki'ilu mehuseh batzmuseh shalora ubetokfoy b'gvurasi b'chol asmoli. Rather, you should always consider yourself to be in the condition where the evil, the ra, is still in your heart, just like it was the day you were born. And it hasn't budged at all. In fact, it's the other way around. On the contrary, it's actually getting stronger with time. Because you're working that muscle. You're giving it a lot of exercise. When you have a meal and you enjoy that meal, you just gave the Yetzer Hara a little more muscle to convince you that the food is good. Even if you did it for the right reason, even if you were eating on Shabbos, even if you're eating for a shir to give you more strength to learn more Torah. The fact is you had delicious physical food. That gives the Yetzer Hara a little more. So not only did the Yetzer Hara not get weaker over time, it's getting stronger. Even though you're a Beinoni and you haven't done any sins at all. Don't stop the fight. Don't let down your guard, because the minute you let down your guard, this Yetzer Hara, who has been growing all along with you, is going to take advantage of the opportunity and get you to sin, God forbid. Now let me ask you a simple question. He says the reason the Beinoni is called kirasha is because what?
Looks. Because you still have the Yetzer Hara.
Because you still have the feelings of the Yetzer Hara of the Rasha. So we said at the beginning, the difference between the tzaddik, Beinoni, and Rasha is in the two components. There is the kochot pnimiyim of the nefesh. There is the internal talents of the nefesh, which is the sechel and midot, the intellect and the emotions. The Yetzer Hara does not control that in a tzaddik, does control that in the Beinoni. Then there's the action. The Yetzer Hara does not control that in the Beinoni, does control that in the Rasha. So Yetzer tzaddik, the kochot nefesh and the levushei hanefesh, Yetzer Hara has no control. The Rasha, kochot nefesh, levushei hanefesh, Yetzer Hara has control. The Beinoni, it's split down the middle. This one, the kochot nefesh goes to the nefesh haba'amit, the levushei hanefesh goes to the nefesh elokit, right? So why say that he's kirasha? Say he's kitzadik. Why are we being negative? If it's split down the middle, so say yeh benecha kitzadik, because you have the behavior of a tzaddik. Why do you have to be yeh benecha kirasha?
It's or yes or not. It's not life.
Right, and the Yetzer and the Rasha is the same thing. It's completely. So why do you say the Beinoni is like a Rasha? Because half of him is like the Rasha. Say he's like the tzaddik because half of him is like the tzaddik. So why does the Mishnah say be yeh benecha kirasha? We want some guilt. We need some guilt.
Is the Rasha fighting to be good?
True.
Humility.
No, because he really is like the Russian. It has to be true. It has to be real. Otherwise, we're playing games. He really is like the Russia. Why? Because remember, we said the kohot nefesh is really who you are. The intellect and the emotions, that's you. The garments, the levushei nefesh, the garments of the soul are called garments. Why? Because it's not really you. It's how you can express yourself differently from how you actually feel. So by definition, the reason they're called levushei nefesh is because they're not actually you. You can want to steal and not steal. That's levushei nefesh. That's you really want to, but you don't because you're controlling yourself in your action. You can really want. You can believe that. You can want to eat on Yom Kippur and not. You can believe that it's daytime and say that it's nighttime. You don't have to say or think or do what you believe. Why? Because it's not really you. The garments of the soul are not true to you. So if the part of you that's like the Russia is the part of you that's really you, guess what? You're Kirusha. Your behavior is not Kirusha, but you are Kirusha. So he's saying, don't forget, the fact that your behavior is perfect doesn't change the fact that you are Kirusha, because who you really are still hasn't changed.
And how you change that?
Maybe you don't. Who says you're supposed to? You become a tzaddik. Some you'll be lucky. You'll be one of the few that gets to become a tzaddik before you die. Maybe not. Probably not. That's not your job. Like it says, Lo alecha hamalacha ligmor. It's not your job to become perfect. You just have to work at it. Lo ata ben chorin libatel mimana. You're not allowed to desist from working at it.
So what part of you is making the decision to?
Good question.
Right, if there's nothing other than Russia, then how does that work that you would make a decision to do something that's not like the Russian idea?
So that's actually a good question. There's a lot of conversation about that around who is Tanya talking to? To the Yetzer Tov or the Yetzer Tov or the Yetzer Hara? Talking to the Beinoni. Oh, the Beinoni is Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Abamit. Who are we talking to? Who is this addressed to? When you say you have a Yetzer Tov and you have a Yetzer Hara, who's the you? The answer is there's a third nefesh. There's actually another nefesh called Nefesh HaSichlit, the intellect.
Okay.
And that's the part of you that makes the decision. The question is, what do you make the decision based on? It doesn't have an inclination one way or another. It just has decision-making ability. Anyway, won't get into that too much. Anyway, so that's why he says that the Beinoni the Mishnah says, Afilu kol ha'olam kulo omrim l'cha tzaddik ata, even if the whole world says you're a tzaddik, heyeh benecha kirusha, because the only thing kol ha'olam kulo sees is the levushei hanefesh. The levushei hanefesh is not really you. The levushei hanefesh is your success in behaving like a mensch, which is wonderful. That's great. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. How do you keep it up? How do you keep behaving like a mensch for the rest of your life and not get tripped up? The answer is, remember who you really are. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get any fantasies in your mind about me. I'm a tzaddik.
Don't relax on the flowers, thinking you're the best in the
Right.
world.
All of a sudden, yeah, I'm behaving perfectly. Everybody says I must be a tzaddik, so I must be a tzaddik. Everybody can't be wrong. The answer is yes, everybody can be wrong. Why? Because the only thing everyone can see is your behavior, and your behavior doesn't have to be who you really are. That was the premise of the whole argument, is that you can behave different from who you really are. Well, if that's the case, well, then it's like you can never win.
Maybe that's the work of the neshama to come. That's why it come here to what's saying Hebrew lezakech.
The
Purify.
nefesh doesn't need
To do the work like we do.
The nefesh is here to purify the world and to purify the body, to purify the nefesh abahamit. But the nefesh elokit doesn't need any purifying. The nefesh abahamit can benefit from an aliyah and can gain more kedusha, but it doesn't. There's nothing wrong with it to begin with. It's kedusha. It's a piece of God. How can you get?
But when we say about like a neshama is coming to the world to fix, to correct.
The world, not to correct itself.
What is the world?
But
Unless you're talking about a tikkun from a previous life.
yeah,
Yeah, that's different. That's
but
not,
that's we all are, like most of us at least.
yeah, but that's not,
So kapara.
that's a kapara. That's not,
From the nylon.
that's not to fix a problem in the neshama. That's to correct something that the neshama experienced,
Okay,
or something like that. But the neshama itself is nefesh elokami ma'al mamash, is a piece of God. It doesn't need any fixing. The nefesh habehamit needs fixing, and the body needs fixing. The physical world needs fixing. Gashmiut needs fixing. The godly soul.
Nefesh Habehamit is something that also going through like lives, or is it something that you get for that existence circle?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Least.
But you said to come here to fix the world. What world? The
Maybe
other
sing
people,
about-
the trees, the
Yes, yes. Everything.
everything.
What does to fix mean? What is tikkun olam? The takin olam. Olam, like we said at the beginning of Tanya, olam means it wasn't in Tanya. We talked about it in our conversations. He'elem. Olam means God hid himself so that you could have a physical world. And we have to make tikkun olam. We have to fix the he'elem. We have to fix the fact that you can't see God in this world, which means we have to make the world so holy that you can see God in the physical also. That's our job. What are you doing tomorrow?
It depends who you're asking, you know. It's like I just came from the redwoods, for example. I saw, it's like, wow, God is so brilliant, you know, everything works perfect.
You saw
is
God
good.
work, you didn't see God himself.
But what about those times when we have tsunami?
Perfect. Been there too.
Crazy waves.
It cleared up
But-
everything.
But why don't the redwoods convince people to serve only God? Why do people go into the redwoods to do avodah zarah?
What is
It
it?
does work.
They just come to experience the Yofi Abria.
Right, but there are people who serve other gods, and they do it even if they look at the redwoods.
Because they relate this beauty to their God.
Which means the redwoods are not convincing. If you're inclined to seeing God in the redwoods, you'll see God in the redwoods.
Mhm.
If you're inclined to seeing
Jesus.
whatever, you'll see whatever in the redwoods. It depends what you're inclined to, because the redwoods are not yet pure kedusha. We're working on it. We're working on revealing the kedusha in the world, huh?
So there will be a new version of Redwood.
For God, is it enough?
What's the goal here? Is it for
That
somebody
the
to be
world-
able to look at the redwoods and go, God is what I should be serving, or is
Yes,
it?
for somebody to look at the redwood and say, look, when people would come to the Rebbe
Yeah.
and get a dollar bill, a bracha, you walk out feeling like, I have to go do a mitzvah.
Mhm.
When you have that feeling after you look at a redwood, Mashiach is here. Then the world is fixed.
What?
Why do you have that feeling only when you look at a tzaddik?
So I might
Everything is
have it.
created by God.
I might have this feeling from seeing whatever, redwood, and somebody else no.
Right.
And the fix is to fix the guy that don't see
No,
God in
to
the
fix the redwood.
to fix the redwood.
Yeah.
Why?
But how could somebody?
Because
be
it's still
aware-
not, it's still hiding God. How could you look at a redwood and not see God made this?
So it's changing perspectives?
But then that doesn't have to do with.
Oh, the perspective of the redwood has to be
change-
so great that no
to-
matter who you are, where you come from, when you look at the redwood, that's what you see.
Everything that you see in the world should shout, God made this.
But isn't it the consciousness that's going to change?
Yeah.
So then not the redwoods are going to.
Right, you
we're
don't actually
talking
fix
about
the
making
redwood,
some
you
really
change,
good
you
things.
fix the he'elem. You fix the concealment.
Some people think they should fix the redwoods.
Right.
They want to cut them to make the
Right.
fires less threatening.
No,
read
some
an article.
redwoods you should cut to make their fire less threatening.
They
So they-
don't burn. I just did this.
The ones that are dead, the ones that fell down. Anyway, let's not get into it. Anyway, so that's why, getting back to Tanya, since we fell down a rabbit hole, we didn't go down that one, we fell down that
For
one.
the redwood.
Right.
Redwood homes.
It's not God when it falls on that house and.
What about the landscape?
You know, I don't remember where I heard this story. Somewhere there's a story of, I believe it was the Alter Rebbe, who was sitting with his family at a dinner table, and they were discussing this issue about how you see godliness in a physical thing. So he said, I can show you. He had a plate. He says, here, I'll show you. You want to see God? You want to see what it means to see the Devar Hashem When God said, let there be, God, in some way, God said, let there be a plate, and now there's a plate. So you want to see that? I'll show you. And then he stopped and he thought for a minute and he said, I can't. Because if I do, you'll just think it's like a magical plate. You won't actually get, because you're not ready for it. Mashiach isn't here yet, so I can't show you. It's not possible because it's not time yet. Something along those lines, a story like that. Anyway, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get rid of the He'elim. We're trying to get rid of the fact that a physical world hides the fact that Hashem created it. Okay, back to Tanya. So that's why it says that a Rasha that a Beinani has to know that he is Kirasha. You have to remind a Beinani that he's like a Rasha, not to put the Beinani down, but to remind the Beinani that he has to keep up the fight. He can never rest on his laurels. He can never calm down and think that things are good because my behavior is perfect. Because the minute you feel that way, it's just a matter of time before you fall back into Russia.
Like quit smoking.
All right.
You can never stop being on God.
By the way, this sounds very discouraging, right? On the face of it, but if you think about it, it is so uplifting. It's so encouraging. Because what this is saying is, the fact that you have negative feelings, the fact that you have desires that you know you're not supposed to have, is actually perfect. And he's going to talk about this later in Tanya also. You have no business being upset that you want things that are not appropriate. It's not appropriate to feel that way.
Is it because it creates contrast so you can see the good?
No, it's because you're supposed to struggle.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with struggling. There's nothing. The way God made us is that we want that which is ungodly and we persevere and we put God before ourselves. That's the way it's supposed to be.
It'd be too easy if we would.
Well, we don't know
what word, so
we don't know what it would be like to be a tzaddik. I'm sure it's not easy for them, right? The work of a tzaddik is not easy. They have a different work. They have to choose between two different kinds of good, which is the greater good. I don't know. I have no idea what it's like to be a tzaddik. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you because Lamed Vavnik, you know.
If that's the goal, to make it happen, then why are we even wanting Mashiach? Or why do we want to get to that stage when everything where Hashem existence is clear?
Because the goal is to convert the Behamit into Elokit. To convert
But then
them.
there will be no battle, and then what's the point?
Then
of
the battle
war?
was won. Because then the world will have become so.
So we accomplished the work.
Yeah. What's going to happen after that? Good question. That's actually a good question. What happens after Mashiach comes?
The world becomes different.
Depends.
We
It depends.
build the temple again.
After Shabbat, there is Sunday again. That's what. I mean, in America, you started on Monday, but
Yeah. No, there's a lot of conversation about that. And the bottom line is, even Rambam says the bottom line is we don't know. We're going to find out when we get there. But there's no question that what the project is to completely remove the He'elim, to completely remove the control that the Nefesh HaBehamit has over the world. How do you do that? By making the Nefesh HaBehamit into a Nefesh Elokit, by turning the unholiness into holiness.
was the Nefesh Be'emit created with the Nefesh Elokit?
No.
No, it's a
The Nefesh
advantage
HaBehamit,
over time.
the Nefesh HaBehamit is created like all other creation. The Nefesh Elokit is Vayipach Ba'apav. It's blown in.
Oh,
It's a whole different kind of creation. And the Nefesh HaBehamit comes with the body right at the beginning. Right when the body starts to develop, there's already a Nefesh HaBehamit. The Nefesh Elokit, it takes a long time to catch up. So they're not a level playing field.
Rabbi, here it says that the God stands in the right or whatever and helps be the tiebreaker or whatnot. So with a tzaddik, like he doesn't need God's help in order to defeat any kind of Yetzer Hara. He just can.
He doesn't.
He need God's help in order to do all this stuff.
Right. Well, no, not to do all this stuff. the tzaddik doesn't need God's help to defeat the Yetzer Hara, because he doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. He needs God's help for everything else,
Right.
but he doesn't need God's help specifically for the task of overpowering the Nefesh HaBehamit, because that's not his problem.
Right.
Moving right along. So even until now, we're talking about the average person, Beinoni. Guy goes to work every morning, deals with all the temptations out there, succeeds, doesn't fall for it, right? What about somebody who sits and studies Torah all day? He's just completely absorbed in Torah. He doesn't even get involved in the physical world at all. Even somebody who just absolutely wants to learn Torah, and all he wants to do is study Torah day and night for Torah's own sake. You think maybe that guy has completely gotten rid of the Yetzer Hara?
No,
Not necessarily.
God is not only in the book.
But if somebody wants nothing other than to study Torah, if everything he wants is to study Torah, then where's the Nefesh HaBehamit?
In the studying of the Torah.
And the inability to do anything else.
Yeah.
He does everything else. He's not saying he doesn't do anything
waiting
else.
for the opportunity.
Where is it?
So he says, "Eliyoch shemehusei v'atzmusoi hu betokvoi gvurasoi b'mekoymoi b'chalas moli." It's possible that in your essence, deep down, the Nefesh HaBehamit is right there in its place, in its office, right? Sitting there in his office. Rak shelevushav shehem achshav v'dibur ha'maaseh shel Nefesh HaBehamit einon mislabshim b'moyach v'apeh v'yadayim v'shari v'yaguf, but the garments of the Nefesh HaBehamit don't affect the garments in action, not in thought and not in speech and not in deed. Because God gave the nature of the mind is to rule over the heart. That's why it's because of that advantage that God gave the human condition, that the mind rules over the heart. That's why the Yetzer Tov is completely dominating all the limbs of the body. That they should be completely in the service of the Nefesh Elokit. That they should be clothed in them only and not in the Nefesh HaBehamit. That's why he's constantly doing the mitzvahs and studying Torah. But the essence of the godly soul, it doesn't have control over the essence of the Nefesh HaBehamit, which means the opinions and the feelings of the Nefesh Elokit, of the godly soul, are not dictating what the Nefesh HaBehamit should feel. It's only dictating what the Nefesh HaBehamit should succeed in getting the person to do. But the feelings are still, the natural feelings of the Nefesh HaBehamit are still for physical human pleasures. Why then do you not feel them? Why does this guy want to study Torah all the time? Because God gave the mind the ability to rule over the heart. That's another gift from God. Remember, a couple of chapters ago, we said that there were two reasons that the Beinoni can be a Beinoni, even though he has a Nefesh HaBehamit that's active. One was because there's an advantage to light over darkness, and there's an advantage to Kedusha over Kalipa. And then he said, and because the nature is that the mind rules over the heart. Why do you need two different reasons? The answer is because there are two different possibilities. One possibility is a person who has regular feelings like any other human being, but manages to control himself. How does that happen? That happens because the nature of good is stronger than the nature of evil. That's one gift. What about somebody who doesn't even want anything negative? How do we know he doesn't want? Because he described him here as somebody who wants to study Torah all day, lishma. He doesn't want to study Torah because it'll make him smart. He doesn't want to study Torah because he wants to be called rabbi. He doesn't want to study Torah because it'll make him a good living. He wants to study Torah because he just wants to study Torah, which means that's a sign that internally, inside, he's already refined. Right? Oh, maybe that's a sign that he's a tzaddik. Alter says, no, not so fast. It's very possible that the reason he's not feeling any negative feelings coming from the nefesh hab'amit is because moach shalit ala lev, because the mind is stronger than the heart. That's the other gift. Which means that even when you're feeling the right feelings, it doesn't prove that there aren't any buried negative feelings. It just means that right now your mind is overpowering your heart. You might still have some animal soul feelings. Ki'im b'sha'ah she'avas Hashem b'hisgalus libo b'eitim mizamanim, like we said before, except for those special times when you're feeling really, really excited about God, like when you're in the middle of davening. Vav gam zayis apam, and even then, ein rak shlita memshala levad. And even if you do succeed in overpowering during davening, were you just full of love for God, the fact is that when there's still one Yetzer Tov and one Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Hara is going to have its time when it's up, and the Yetzer Hara is down, and a couple minutes later the Yetzer Hara is going to come up, and the Yetzer Tov is going to fall down. That's the nature of a wrestling match. One is on top, one is up on bottom. The other one gets on top. That's what happens. The godly soul overpowers the animal soul through using bina, which is understanding, which gives you the strength to overpower. By thinking about the greatness of God, by awakening through your understanding and through contemplating the greatness of God, you develop a great flaming passion for God, but in the right side of your heart, and then the animal soul in the left side of your heart is bowed, is broken, is bowed to the godly soul. But by the Beinani, by definition, it's bowed, but it's not defeated. Ela b'tzadik. Only in a tzaddik is it defeated. By a tzaddik, it says, my heart is empty within me, which means there's no animal soul here. Remember what I said last week and the week before, and I'm going to try to remember to say it every week. There are two projects here. One project is to become a Beinani. Or maybe even if you're lucky, God will bless you and you will become a tzaddik. But there's another project at the same time, which is find areas in your life, specific areas in your life where you can push yourself into Beinani territory with regard to that specific area of life. Like for some people, if you're you go to the refrigerator on Shabbos afternoon and you're looking for something to eat and you see something, and you think, oh my gosh, if only that was warm, it would be delicious. Let me just light a fire and I'll heat it up. And you think, it's Shabbos, I really shouldn't. Maybe I should. It's just, I probably shouldn't. You're in Russia territory. You're considering doing it. That's Russia. What you need to do is, just for this one mitzvah, try to push yourself to where it's just not going to happen. How hard is it? We're not talking about changing your whole life and becoming a tzaddik and sitting by the kotel all day and all night. We're talking about getting to where, with this one mitzvah, you've made it clear in your life, you're never violating this one again. There's no way I'm ever cooking on Shabbos again. Why? Because God said not to. That's it. No, so all of a sudden you're some big tzaddik? No. With regard to this mitzvah, I'm trying to be Beinani. That's all. Or whatever. Pick whichever mitzvah you want. Everybody has their mitzvahs where they're Russia. Everybody has their mitzvahs where they're Beinani. Everybody has their mitzvahs where they're tzaddik. Try to push some of the Russia category mitzvahs in your life into the Beinoni category. Try to push some of the Beinoni category mitzvahs into the Tzaddik category. Like the Alter Rebbe said, there are 500 levels of Beinoni. Try to push yourself from lower level Beinoni into higher level Beinoni. Push yourself into just a little more with one particular mitzvah. You don't have to become the Beinoni. You can be more Beinoni-like with regard to a particular mitzvah. That's really the project. It's not a zero-sum game. Make it work wherever you can and in as many places and as many areas of life as you can. That's the goal. I think we'll leave it there for today. We're going to stop right by V'libi Chalal B'kirbi, which is right in the middle of a sentence, but we're going to stop there anyways. We'll back up a couple of lines next week.